Welcome to Keep You 100 Radio. I'm your host, Lissy Pointer, type 1 diabetic, certified health coach, personal trainer, and founder of Needles and Spoons Health and Wellness. Inside this podcast, you'll find the real and raw conversations around diabetes management, including the lessons that we don't learn in our endo's office, my best tips and trainings, and conversations from the experts that I trust inside the community so that you can create more predictability in your diabetes management and feel empowered while doing so. Let's dive in. I love using Skin Grip because honestly it's the only patch company that I found that actually keeps my devices on while I'm doing things that I love, like weightlifting, running with my dogs, being really active and doing the things that I didn't think I could do before with diabetes. Hello everyone, welcome back to Keep 100 Radio. I'm so excited today because I have on the show one of our former clients and alumni, Kayleigh Glick, on the episode. And Kayleigh came to me, I want to say we had our consultation call in March, around that time frame. And from the second I met you, I swear you were just such a light. And I knew that Keep 100 was a perfect program for you. I knew that we had such a good connection to work with each other. And I just knew that you were going to add something so powerful to the community that we were building. So I think I'm just really excited for this conversation, but I would love for you to take a second and just introduce yourself and share a bit about your journey.
Okay, well, first of all, that was so sweet. I want to cry. Thank you for saying all that. But yeah, no, like you said, my name's Kayleigh Glick. I'm 25 and I've had type 1 diabetes since I was 14. So I just hit my 11-year anniversary back at the end of August. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Right now, I'm just a stay-at-home cat mom. I have a degree in social work. So I, was working in a nursing home for a couple of years and left my job back in March. So now diabetes is my full-time job, pretty much.
Isn't it always?
Yeah, basically.
No, I loved working with you and having on calls because and I even on this as we're recording this, every time you see Kayleigh, there's always a cat somewhere nearby, either crawling on her keyboard or, what was that one time you were that your fridge was in the background? And I was like, is there a cat on your fridge too? And yeah, they're everywhere. I love it.
Yeah, I have 7 of them, so it's hard to get away from them, but I love them. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, I feel like I'm like that, but with dogs. I could totally have 7 dogs and be 100% okay with it. So I hear you.
Yes, do it. It'll change your life.
So you had just hit your 11-year mark, which is insane. And you mentioned that you were 14 when you were diagnosed. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that experience as kind of a teen and being diagnosed with something like type 1?
Yeah, it was super stressful, as I'm sure it is for most people. But I had no idea. I didn't know anything about type 1 diabetes. This was actually about a week before I started my freshman year of high school. So, I had that added to it, trying to figure out how to eat things and how to bolus for those things. And I was in a different, school setting. So that made things a whole nother level of difficult. But the way I was diagnosed was actually really kind of interesting because I have had hypothyroidism since I was about 10. So my mom kind of always knew about, the other diseases that could kind of go hand in hand with that. And her best friend's daughter has type 1 diabetes. So she knew the symptoms, and there were a few weeks where I was nonstop drinking water. And, that's one of the main symptoms is thirst. And I was just at the fridge all day long with my cup of water, just yep, I'm here now. I live by the fridge. And it was, it's kind of funny now to look back on, but I had started working out and I lost 20 pounds in 2 weeks. And I was like, wow, people say that it's really hard to lose weight. This is not hard at all. And, so all those things started kind of to line up. And my mom's like, okay. So we went over to her friend's house and her daughter tested my blood sugar and it was over 500.
Oh.
So they were like, all right, to the emergency room. So it could have been a lot worse. I know a lot of people go into DKA and things like that. So I had a pretty smooth diagnosis, and the transition from there was bumpy, but I was also lucky because I was still 14. So I was still living at home. I still had my mom to kind of, take care of a lot of it for me. And I didn't have to just, I know a lot of people when they're diagnosed as young adults, it's just like completely overwhelming, especially if you're already in like the workforce, and it's just like you have, no, you don't have a parent to like take care of it for you. So I was really grateful for that. But adjusting to high school and adjusting to this disease that I didn't think I even realized at the time that I was going to have this forever, it
Mhm.
just kind of it was a lot to deal with. It was absolutely crazy.
Yeah, and like I do think in a way like your diagnosis was you're very lucky that your mom recognized the symptoms because it can be
Mhm.
so easy to pass them off and saying, okay, like a 14-year-old going through like growth spurts, there's puberty, there's like
Mhm.
different transitions in our lives that like we can easily be like, okay, like we can make sense of it in a way where
Yep.
like it doesn't have to be anything dramatic as diabetes, but the fact that your mom caught it and was like, this sounds like something that we should investigate is
Yeah.
definitely huge.
Yeah.
So you said that like you didn't really realize at first that it was going to be like a chronic illness. Like you didn't realize that you were going to have it
Mhm.
forever. At what point did it kind of hit you that like, oh, okay, this is for real?
I think it was probably only a couple months later. Because I think that, when I was first diagnosed, all of the doctors seemed to really under exaggerate the complicatedness of this disease. And it was like, okay, well, your blood sugar is high, so you're going to take insulin. And now, whenever you eat, you have to take insulin, but you can eat whatever you want as long as it's not regular soda, and you're good, go home. And I was like, okay, great. Like, and then a few months later, I'm like, this is exhausting. Like, this is,
Mm.
it's a lot more than, first of all, what they said it was going to be, because so many other things, as we all know, affect your blood sugar. So they completely oversimplified it. And I
Mhm.
kind of had that moment where I was like, I have to do this forever. And it sucks.
Yeah, did that ever because I always wonder about this because I was 19 when I was diagnosed. So I was a little bit older and it was a little bit is a different transition. I can't say it was better or worse, it was just different. Did you
Mhm.
ever go through any of those like angsty teenage years where like you rebelled against diabetes? Like,
Maybe not. I don't think I recognized it if I did.
mm,
Because probably all of my teenage years, I was in a way rebelling against it.
mm,
I never really took the time to sit down and say, what do I need to do? Like, when your doctors tell you you have this new disease and you can eat whatever you want, you just have to take a shot. You're like, okay, I don't need to change anything. So I never took the time to think about, should I be changing my eating habits, my movement habits, anything like that. So it just, it was never a big deal for me, and it should have been.
mm,
So those years, all through my teenage years, and probably a little bit past that even, diabetes was just this kind of extra thing, and I didn't really care that much about it. It was completely not a big deal to me at all. If my blood sugar was high, take insulin. I'm not thinking about the repercussions of that at all. So it was probably on the back burner for a good 9 years out of these 11.
yeah, I can definitely agree with that. I feel like my experience is really similar because you're right. You're kind of given this information of, oh, eat what you want, but take insulin, carb count, or
Hmm.
use your sliding scale and see you in 3 months.
Yep.
And we kind of get in this routine of, okay, we, first of all, we're not really taking the time to grieve or process. It's
Hmm.
just kind of like, okay, like jumping into this new life of this new way of managing and this whole other aspect of my life that I never expected to be there. And we kind of I mean, maybe some people take that time to process, and I wish that was something I allowed myself to do. My advisors were like, you can withdraw from the semester for college. And I was like, no way, not going to do that.
Mhm.
Again, being a teenager. But yeah, like we get in this cycle of just managing and just being like, okay, I'll correct the high, I'll correct the low. But at least for me, I'm like, I'm going to still go and eat what I want. I'm going to still go and party. I'm going to still
Yep.
continue like pushing myself in my studies. Like nothing really changed. And like, not that life necessarily has to change in a different way, but like there's a different way of taking care of yourself, if that makes sense, which
Mhm.
I know for you, that was something that we worked a lot on, was that
Yeah.
self-care aspect, which we'll get into. But you said that, this kind of took place for a good 9 years, which I think kind of led us into our initial conversation of that, okay, diabetes is on the back burner. I'm kind of feeling burnt out. Like I remember you had mentioned like even pre-bolusing for breakfast is just like not a thing. Like it doesn't feel good right now. Can you kind of speak to that of like where you were before we had started working together?
Yeah. So diabetes it's always there. It's not going to go away no matter what you do. But I was in a spot where I was probably just doing the bare minimum that I needed to do to survive. Um, I have a CGM and I have an insulin pump, and I've had them both for years. But unless you actually utilize those tools the way that they're meant to be utilized, and you make changes based on the information that they give you, they're not doing you a whole lot of good. So I had a CGM, but I wasn't wearing it all the time. And I mean, for me, a CGM takes maybe 3, 4 minutes to put on to, wipe your skin and do all that fun stuff. It doesn't take long at all. But if I had one on and then, 10 days later it died, it was like, okay, well, I'm not going to change it. I don't feel like putting another one on. And
Mhm.
that would go on for months. So I might, get 2 different sessions out of a 3-month period for my CGM. So I never knew what my blood sugars were because I wasn't testing them manually either. No, no, that never happened. Um, and then taking insulin, it was just sporadic. I would take insulin when I felt like it, and that wasn't very often. So I would consciously be eating something, and I'm like, well, the worst that's going to happen is my blood sugar is going to go high. I'm only thinking about what's happening right now, I'm not thinking about what's
Mhm.
happening later down the road. So I wasn't carb counting, I wasn't pre-bolusing, I didn't know what my blood sugar was. I was only taking insulin maybe half the time. So my blood sugar was always high. And I was never getting the care that and the attention that I needed for my diabetes. So I was always in this kind of reactive state instead of proactive. And then even sometimes I wouldn't know my blood sugar was high because I would feel like crap, but I didn't care enough to take insulin to correct it. It just was like I'm completely apathetic towards this diagnosis right now.
Yeah. Was there like because you're not a lazy person. Like I do not think with any diabetic, us feeling burnt out comes to laziness. And I feel like that's
Mhm.
the very first kind of reason that our physicians come up with. They're like, well, you're just being lazy, you don't want to do this. Well, of course nobody wants to do this, but was there kind of a voice or like a subconscious kind of thought that was coming up that was preventing you from wanting to put diabetes to the forefront?
Um, yeah, I think so because I don't know how long I've had depression because it's only been diagnosed for maybe about a year. But I do have diagnosed MDD and anxiety. So I think that was clouding my judgment for such a long time. And that voice of it doesn't matter, there's going to be no repercussions if you don't take care of yourself was always there. And I would have rather just ignore it and pretend it didn't exist. And I think a lot of it goes back to what you said before. I never had that time to grieve, and so many people didn't. And that's huge. I never really thought about that before. You literally get this diagnosis of a life-changing event, and I mean, there should be some therapy that goes along with that.
Yeah, yeah. Like, and especially with how it's treated on like social media or just the media in general of, oh, you just have diabetes, or oh, at least it's not cancer, or oh,
Mhm.
like all you have to do is take a shot now. And like that just first of all makes us feel like our diagnosis is underplayed and that we're not allowed to kind of have these emotions that go along with it.
Mhm.
But I mean, thank you also for being vulnerable and sharing kind of what was happening in the background that was kind of pulling into the diabetes aspect. Um, but like we know that too, this year brought a lot of big milestones for you. And I don't know if you want to kind of share about those, but how did this mindset or this reactivity around your diabetes impact those milestones?
So I feel like I was never able to fully enjoy the big events in my life because my blood sugar was always so high that I felt like crap a good portion of the time. I was tired, I was thirsty, I was lethargic and mentally exhausted. So even though something really exciting might have been happening, I was just kind of like, okay, well, I want to go lay down. Like
Mm-hmm.
so that really put a damper on a lot of things. Like last year, at the end of last year, I got engaged. So, we started planning a wedding and I was at work every day, and those things just were kind of just like going through the motions. Even getting engaged was not a big deal. I was just like, yeah, uh-huh. I'm literally so tired mentally and physically that it's not that big of a deal to me, and that seemed crazy. Like, those are the types of things that you want to celebrate. But when you
Mm-hmm.
have, diabetes there and you're not taking care of it the way you should be, so you feel guilty about that, you don't really feel like you can, properly take time to enjoy the positive things because you're supposed to be feeling bad. That's how I felt anyway. You're supposed to be feeling bad about yourself because you're not taking care of yourself. So how can I enjoy this other thing when I know that I'm not doing the things I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of takes away that ability to embrace those moments and celebrate when you want to look forward, but diabetes is
Hmm.
kind of that lingering thing, being like, I'm still here. I'm still gonna be here, a part of that journey with you, which can hold us back, but it can also be empowering too when we kind of think about the place that you are now, which we'll get into. But what was that? What made you kind of think, okay, this is enough. Like, I want to bring diabetes to the forefront because, like, you want to tackle it, or you want things to be different. Where did that start? What was that pull?
I think it was probably at the beginning of this year, January, February timeframe, where my now husband and I were planning on getting married in March. And I thought to myself, it's not just me anymore. Like, I am going to have a husband, and that's a partnership. So we're in this together, and I can't just be looking out for myself anymore. He wants me to take care of myself, and I feel like, not that I owe it to him, but it just, that changed everything, knowing that somebody else is depending on me. And then, I really want a family. I would love to have kids one day. And knowing where I was at with my diabetes, I knew there was probably no way I was going to be able to have a healthy baby if I was neglecting my diabetes that badly. So it kind of all came together when I was like, well, I'm getting married, which means, you know, probably in a few years we'll be wanting to have kids. And that's not going to happen unless I change something. And then in addition to that, it had just been my 10-year anniversary of diabetes. And after neglecting it for so many years, I was like, how the hell do I not have any complications yet? Like, I'm so grateful and so lucky to not have any right now. But I knew they were coming because I hadn't been taking care of it. So everybody tells you, all the doctors tell you, all these scary things are going to happen to you if you don't take care of it. And they might still happen because I did spend that long period of time of my life where I didn't care for it. But I thought to myself, I can start taking better care of it now, and maybe I can try to prevent some of those things from happening. But it's been 10 years, you're getting married, you want to have kids, like you need to get your act together. I don't know what happened. It was just like everything came together in this one moment, and I'm like, okay, you need to sort your crap out. Like, yeah.
But that's huge also because like just having that pull to bring it to the forefront or to like take ownership of this is huge. That, it might take us a long time to get there, but just having that there to say in an empowering way of doing this will let me have a happy marriage. It will let me start my family. It'll let me enjoy the celebrations that I should be enjoying. Do those 10 years matter? Absolutely. But the fact that you took that ownership and you did the work to bring it there, that's huge. And not everyone can say that. But I believe from our conversation, there was also a big social media influence that was playing into this, right? Do you mind speaking on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, so social media is such a big impact in society these days, and that's how I found you. So I'm very grateful for that reason. And there's a lot of good things that it's there for. And the diabetic online community had been such a big part of my life for so many years. And people say that there's like influencers on Instagram, things like that. So I was following a good amount of those types of accounts, specifically related to diabetes. And that comparison game absolutely killed me because there were a lot of people sharing what their blood sugars were, what their A1Cs were, how they lived day to day. And I'm seeing all these people thriving, and I know that I'm supposed to be thriving, but I'm not. So that was making me feel so, so guilty. So I actually got to a point where I looked out for other accounts that were kind of in a similar place that I was in. And I did find a few Instagram accounts where there were people who have diabetes related complications, and they talk all about their stories, their experiences, and how they're persevering despite all of these things. And that was great. That's what I was looking for. But I think that almost made it worse. I didn't realize at the time, but it made that fear stronger because I knew, or I had this feeling that I knew these complications were going to happen to me. So when I started reading other people's stories about what they had gone through, it just made it so much more real. And now I wasn't just comparing myself to the people that were doing a great job, I was comparing myself to the people that were having a lot of struggles. So it was just all coming down on me, and no matter what I did, it just felt like social media wasn't helping anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of like this like double-edged sword. Because like you see people who are thriving and like just posting the great blood sugars and kind of that toxic positivity of like you
Hmm.
can be thriving and you're like, well, like I don't feel like I am yet. So like I'm not really there. Like life isn't peaches and cream. It's not perfect. Like, let's maybe step back from that. And then there's that whole other side of kind of the darker things that nobody really talks about. And yes, it can be empowering, very empowering to talk about and acknowledge that down the line, yes, we can be prone to complications. They can be there. We can still thrive with them. But it can
Hmm.
also, right, put you in that place of kind of anticipating things that weren't there yet. If
Right.
that is that, does that kind of like, am I saying
Yeah.
it right?
No, exactly. I had this feeling of, okay, well, great. Now they're inevitable, no matter what I do.
Right. And I think when we had kind of started working together, there was kind of, so I remember talking about kind of the towards mentality and away from mentality.
Hmm.
And I think that's where we were able to create a lot of shifts because, so for anybody listening, an away mentality is kind of like you're motivated by going away from something. So in this case, it would be I'm motivated to take care of my diabetes because I want to go away from the possibility of complications. But
Hmm.
then there's the towards mentality, which is I want to take care of my diabetes management because I want to live a fulfilling life. And the subconscious can't process negative. So when we're kind of motivated by those away from motivators, our subconscious doesn't know what to do because there's no direction there. So when we give it a very specific thing to go towards, we're giving it direction. We can go accomplish our goals. So that was, I feel like that was a big thing that we kind of worked through, of kind of like shifting, okay, like let's step away from the thinking, not thinking about diabetes or as like a complications or that like doom waiting for us, but shifting to how can we replace that with what we want out of it, right? Does that,
Hmm. Yeah.
is
It's
that
just so funny. I'm like giggling to myself over here because I have our notes in front of me from the day that we had that conversation. And I like everything that you just said is like word for word what I have written down. So
no way.
I love it.
That's amazing. I remember that specific conversation of like there was a day. There was a
Yeah,
day.
there was a day. Yeah. I don't even remember how that conversation got there. I think we had had a few, meetings already, and I feel like maybe you just got to a point where you're like, something is going on and you're not like giving me the full story, because I have the potential, but somehow I'm not fulfilling what I need to do. And it just all came out. I was like, okay, well, I'm absolutely terrified of getting diabetes related complications. And that fear is so strong that I was frozen. I didn't want to do anything because I had that feeling that it was inevitable. I felt like nothing I was going to do now would, make it better or change it. And I was telling you about how all these, you know, Instagram accounts and the diabetic online community wasn't so helpful anymore. It wasn't so much inspirational as it was more hindering, my ability to do the things I needed and wanted to do. And you looked at me and you were just like, stop, like, you need to stop comparing yourself. And, you said this with like the face that I'll never forget the face you made, because it was full of love. Like, that sounds, that sounds really harsh, but you were like, this is not helping you at all. And you need to realize that when you're sitting there comparing yourself to other people, there's always a disconnect. And that word just like completely triggered me. You were like, you are, you're spending so much time focusing on or you're alike to these people when there's so many differences. And you said that person's story is not your story. And I just was like, oh my God. And I just completely started crying because, people tell you don't compare yourself to other people. And that's great. But it's kind of similar to saying, like, don't be sad. Like, okay, well, how, like,
Right.
so
Right.
when you said, you know, don't worry about how you're similar, focus on the disconnect. That word triggered me, and it's like I never looked at it that way before, and that changed everything. And I'm not saying that the fear is completely gone, it's not, but that helped to redirect my thoughts in the future.
Yeah, you can make them more empowering of like my journey can be different. And I
Right.
remember going kind of like reverse engineering the thought process of like, okay, like there might be similarities up to a point, and then we were able to find the exact spot where kind of that disconnect happened and
Mm-hmm.
and find that so that we could redirect into those different thought patterns. Or, yes, you're right. Like the fear is never going to completely be gone. I think we can all kind of agree with that. But when we can shift to that more empowering mindset of like, how can I let my journey be different? How can I let my story be different? And again, like I'm speaking to this episode and saying that there's nothing wrong with complications. That doesn't make you a bad diabetic by any means, and we can all live very fulfilled lives. But there is, that part of you that doesn't want to 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 have them, and that's okay too. Like either way is
Mm-hmm.
be okay. And that allowed us to kind of get on the roll of those different habits, those self care habits, those diabetes management strategies, all of those kind of, it created that ripple effect of, okay, now I can actually move forward. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there were just so many, oh my gosh, there's so much that I want to say. But yeah, like what were some of those small things that kind of created that ripple effect that like allowed you to move forward? Like what were those first tangible items that you started doing for yourself?
Well, I remember you asked me a question. You said, well, what fulfills you in life? And I sat there for a while. Like, I don't know. And that was kind of what started the whole thing. What are the little things that you like to do that you really enjoy doing that you might not have time for, or you might not even be making time for them? So we made a list, and you helped me come up with days and times that I could carve out and set in my schedule, because otherwise you're just like, oh, take a bubble bath. Okay, well, if I don't tell myself a time to do it, it's probably not going to happen.
Mhm.
So that was huge, finding the things that I did enjoy, that brought me joy. And because self-care is becoming a lot more prominent in society, and I'm so glad that people are recognizing that. And you can go online and look up 100 different ways to practice self-care, but they might not all work for you.
Mhm.
So, you need to go through and find out what you actually enjoy doing and find the time to do it. Make a routine, set a schedule. And that changed a lot. And then the other huge thing that we started doing was making my own, like, I call them power phrases. They're like little mantras that I tell myself. And I even write them down sometimes, and posting them in places where you're going to see them regularly, or see them where you need to see them, where you need that reminder. Which is funny because you told me to post them on my cats, which I'll see them all the time if I do that, but I don't think they would like that.
It would have worked.
But that was really important. And it's similar to like affirmation cards, which I really enjoy those as well. Just they're small little positive reminders of why you're important, why you're doing what you're doing. Those things that, like I said, they're small, but they make such a huge difference. And I love, love, love affirmation cards. I mean, you can buy them on places like Amazon and Etsy, but you can make your own too. So they're catered to your own story, and, catered to what you need to hear.
Mhm.
So that's kind of what those power phrases turned into for me. And, when you talked about using language that moves towards something instead of away from something, you helped me create these phrases that were what I needed to do in terms of my diabetes, but related to my goals and my feelings. Because otherwise, it was just like, do this, and that's the whole thing. That's it. Like,
Right.
but if you say, do this because, one day you want to be able to have a baby and you want to feel good about yourself and your marriage and everything, like that puts it all in perspective.
Right. But when we get to put things in our own words and we get to do things in a perspective of where we can be future forward in that focus, we get to actually make sustainable change, and we get to do it in a really positive and empowered way that's more than
Mhm.
just checking something off of our list.
Right.
And like, so let me ask you this. If this was a conversation that you brought to your endo or your physician and you had said like, I'm having the I'm already laughing.
Sorry.
And you had said like, I am worried about these complications, this is a fear of mine, and like I'm worried about my marriage and starting a family, like how do you think that conversation would have differed?
I don't think it would have been a very long conversation at all. And I like my endocrinologist. He's a really great doctor. But when it comes to the mental aspect of things, I think that this is true of a lot of doctors, and maybe just specifically endocrinologists. I don't know. But when you go into your endocrinologist's office every 3 months, they're not like, how are you feeling?
Mm.
I see your blood sugars. Are you feeling good about those? How have you been doing mentally? They're not asking those questions. They're looking at your blood sugars, and they're, why was your number this that day? What did you eat that day? What did you do to correct it that day? And they're asking all these technical questions, and then they, suggest things to change your ratios and whatnot, and then you're on your way. So I think if I had gone to my doctor's office, and I might have even tried to do this, I can't remember, but if I had said, I'm feeling like shit, first of all, and I really just, I don't know what to do. Like, mentally, I'm tired, and it's impacting my ability to physically take care of myself. I don't think we would have gotten very far. I think he probably might have referred me to maybe a psychologist or a therapist or something like that. But that's also hard because you want somebody to talk to that understands diabetes. So that's not always doable. But and that's why I think that so many people are scared to talk about these types of things, especially related to complications. It's almost like a taboo subject because I have a feeling that a lot of people are scared of them. Nobody really wants that stuff to happen. And like you said, it's not to put people down that do have complications. Sometimes, they are very, very hard to avoid, and it doesn't make you a lesser person or anything like that. But, being able to talk about them before they happen is so important because that's a very real fear.
Mhm.
And I think that people are scared to talk about that fear. So we're all just kind of like suffering in silence. And, a lot of people, for me included, impedes our ability to take care of ourselves. So, anyway, I feel like I got away from your question. But basically, what
No.
it comes down to is I don't think that, from in my experience, I don't think that doctors focus very much on, how your chronic illnesses also affect your mental ability to take care of yourself. Because, I mean, if you have type 1 or type 2 diabetes, you are at a much higher risk of developing depression. And I'm sure a lot can be said for other similar chronic illnesses as well. So, why is that not more focused on when you go to the doctor?
Yeah, no, I think your answer is perfect. And I'm just kind of thinking like my own experience too. Like my endocrinologist has me fill out this form, like kind of like a survey every year. And it's the first question is always, are you depressed? And it's like, well, gee, let me take a look. Let me think about that one. Have I been diagnosed? No, but like, do I have depressive thoughts? Like, yeah, they
Mhm.
come up. I think we can all say it can ebb and flow in times. And there just needless to say, like there's so much more going on than we can ever get in a 20-minute appointment or a
Mhm.
5-question evaluation. That's just another thing to, make sure that they check off of their list. And yes, like tools like therapy, psychologists, so important. And there's always a time and place. But there are like little tools that we can implement, like being future focused or like using those towards motivators to, at least get our patterns on the right track and shift to a more empowered way of thinking about our diagnosis.
Mhm.
And you're right, it should be something more normalized in talking about in the community. Complications is not a dirty word. It's not anything to be ashamed of. There's a way to like have that equal balance of understanding that they're a possibility and there's something that can happen, especially with the diagnosis of diabetes, but also knowing that it doesn't have to. Like it,
Mhm.
in either way, you can be empowered and have a very fulfilled life. And I'm just so proud of you for being in a spot where now you can talk about it in kind of that balanced state of saying, is that fear still there? Yes. But am I in a better place now? Also, yes. Or at least I hope to think that you're in a better position now.
No, yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, that fear is probably never going to go away. And my mental health problems are probably never going to go away, but I've started taking care of those things better. And in turn, I've been able to focus and pay more attention on my diabetes. That was 100% that barrier for me. And that barrier was so tall. I had no idea that, taking care of my mind first was going to positively affect how I can take care of my body.
Right. So, okay, let's talk about that then. Like how does that compare now? Like where are you at now in comparison to that conversation in early spring?
Um, it's like a complete 360, honestly, or 180, whatever. It's so different. Because after you and I spent time going through those self-care practices for myself and going through the type of language that I needed to be talking to myself in, I, those things helped so much. And I realized I do have mental health diagnoses. I do have issues. So I did start seeing a therapist. Um, and I've that's been such a huge help. And like I said before, even though that mental health professional might not be skilled or experienced with diabetes, they still have a lot of information to give when it comes to how to deal with your feelings related to a chronic illness. So that ongoing support is really, really crucial because, when you and I had all those conversations back earlier this year, they were so helpful. And I realized I needed that all the time. And that's okay to have something long term, because guess what? Diabetes isn't going anywhere. So to take care of your mind is so, so important when it comes to that. So my diabetes has it's doing a lot better. I feel a lot better and a lot more confident in my ability to take care of it, because of you. You know, I learned so many different things that I was never told in my doctor's office. You know, it's not just pre-bolusing, carb counting, taking insulin. It's how in the world does exercise affect your blood sugars? How do different types of food like protein and fat affect your blood sugars? I had never learned that, and that's absolutely crazy. You know, how did I go 10 years with having diabetes without realizing, or not realizing, without getting the knowledge that those things play a huge, huge role in how your blood sugars react? So, anyway, now that I know how to do those things and I have more tools to take care of it, and my mind is in such a better place, I just feel like I'm fully equipped to take care of it. Um, and I'll be completely honest, my A1Cs have not been great my entire life. My A1C when you and I first met was a 9.1, I think. Um, and I'm getting it tested on Tuesday. So I'm really excited to see what it is. But you know how Clarity does like the little estimated A1C. I know that's not completely accurate, but right now it says a 6.2. So I'm really hoping that it's really
Shut
close.
up.
Yeah, I know, right? I've never seen a 6 in my entire life. Like, I can't believe it. And I
Wait,
know it's just insane. Like,
the last time
so,
we talked, it was like at a 7 point something.
yep, yep. And it just
Man,
goes to show, like, you put in all the work and like you will get there. You really will. You just have to figure out what works for you, and what is your barriers? Like, what is stopping you from getting to where you need to be?
yes. Oh my gosh. I see, this is where the number is not everything. I will say, like, there are very
Hmm.
healthy low A1Cs and there are very unhealthy ones. And what I am so proud of is that you did that. Like, okay, maybe that's the estimated A1C, but you did that while doing the work alongside of it. And like everything is in correlation now. Like it all came together. I'm so excited to hear how that goes on Tuesday. Oh my
I
gosh.
know. I'll let
Oh
you
my
know.
gosh. Yes, please do.
I can't
And
wait.
in one of our calls, we kind of created that. We don't have to get into too much detail here because it's pretty personal, but we kind of created that timeline of like, okay,
Hmm.
like realistically to get to your goal, like how do we want the year to play out? And I feel like we're right on track.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
I
So my goal for August was a 6.5. So we're a little bit past August, but it's also a little bit lower, hopefully, than 6.5. So, like going back to, goal setting, you have to make specific, concrete goals that are time specific and manageable. Because if you don't make a detailed goal, it's just willy nilly. I one day want to do this, but how? How are you going to get there? When are you
Mhm.
going to get there? Like, who's going to help you get there? Those things are so important. So having it written out and laid out like that, I think has been another huge thing that has just helped me get here.
Yes, and with like such a specific purpose that you get to
Hmm.
look forward to, like, oh my gosh, and now we're almost in the new year, and I'm just so excited to hear how everything pans
Well,
out.
and that's crazy because I have always dreaded my endocrinology appointments. um, I hate getting my A1C tested because I'm just like, here we go. But I'm looking forward to it. I've never ever looked forward to an
Oh
A1C
my
test in
god.
my life.
Oh, I am like so excited for you, and I feel like he's gonna be like, who is this person that I'm talking to? Like, I don't recognize her because I don't
Yeah.
recognize her.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh my gosh, and all in just 8 weeks too. Like that's so exciting. So if somebody is sitting in your shoes that you were in for the past, not like you said kind of like those 9 years and the position that
Hmm.
you were in early spring where they have this like fear and they're not really sure how to express it, who to turn to, how to even identify those barriers. Like what is the advice that you would give to them? What would you say to them?
That's difficult, because like I said, like identifying those barriers is huge. So I think, finding a support team is huge. If you're not able to identify those things yourself, maybe somebody else that's really close to you in your life can help you get there. And for me, that was you, which is crazy because I didn't know you at all. But after being able to, I'm an open book, so I find it really easy to just completely blab my feelings. So after I told you all of that, and you realized there was something deeper under the surface, i.e., my total fear and unwillingness to talk about my fear of complications, you were able to help me get there. So being able to identify somebody in your life or several people, whether it's a parent or a sibling or a close friend, a partner, whoever, I think that that is crucial because you can't do this alone and nobody's asking you to do it alone. So once you find that person, if you're able to tell them exactly how you're feeling and just be completely honest. And I actually used to be the type of person where I could never ever talk about how I was feeling. If I was going to do that, I would write it in a letter and give it to my mom, or I would ask my mom, I said, can we go on a walk? Because, then we're right next to each other and I'm not looking at her. I could never make eye contact and be honest about my feelings. So anyway, I can't remember where I was going with that. But if you're able to talk about your feelings with that type of person and be honest with them, then they can help you understand what barriers you have and then how to break down those barriers and get to where you need to be and get to your goals and achieve those things.
Well, first of all, thank you for putting your trust in me and helping you do that and allowing me to support you, because that's a huge honor to be able to do with anybody. And I think you're so right. Like, there are people that everybody, no matter who you are, like, should not have to carry this alone. Like, that's not that's not a part of the role that comes with living with diabetes, and it's not part of the diagnosis. So I think that really speaks to that in whoever it is, it's a family member, a friend, a spouse or partner, whatever it is. Like, there should be somebody in your life that can help you carry that weight, because that's never something that we should have to carry alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to go off of that, if there's not, if you feel like you don't have a person that you can go to, I would suggest this for anybody, honestly, but that's because I have a social work background. So I truly, truly believe in what I do, that mental health is so important, and finding a healthcare professional to talk to is completely, completely okay. And a lot of the times it's necessary. But if you feel like you don't have somebody personal in your life that you can talk to, I would highly suggest looking into counseling and finding somebody professional to talk to.
Absolutely. Yeah, just like we had said, like, complications isn't a dirty word, therapy isn't either.
Right,
I think,
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
that's something that should be accessible to everybody too. And there are new
Mhm.
ways that we're getting there. There are different programs, like I think there's like BetterHelp, and I have to look at some links, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Well, there's
absolutely.
so many different ways to do it now too. I'm so grateful for COVID-19, which sounds crazy, but I'm grateful to the small things that it's helped with, because going into a doctor's office always, for me, is associated with so much anxiety. So because of that, I don't have to go into my therapist's office. She calls me on the phone and she tells me, do you want to do a Zoom call? And I'm like, no, I don't want to do a Zoom call. I want to talk on the phone, because then I don't have to look at you and I just feel more comfortable. So that kind of thing is becoming a lot more available these days as well, and I'm hoping that even when the pandemic is over, that those types of things will continue to be available, because there are a lot of people that like to hide behind a screen, and that's okay. Like,
Mhm.
I know that they make apps and stuff like that if you want to talk to somebody, so that's an option too. But I just think that any way that you can find professional help is absolutely important. And like I said, it's absolutely okay. It's not taboo. So many people have therapists have therapists. It's okay.
Yes. I actually just did another episode with Natalie Swanson, and we had talked about just, the concept of eating disorders and type 1. And I had asked a question of, like, when is the best time to get help? And she said, if you're somebody who's even thinking of, like, I'm not there yet, you're there. Like
Mhm.
it's okay to ask for support because you
Mhm.
don't have to wait until you're at the complete burnout or at the, at your last straw to get support. Like you can get support before you get there and be proactive with it. So I
Right.
think that like fits in really well here too.
Right. And you're in control. Think about the things that you're in control of. If you're not sure, it's okay to try it. And then you can say at any point, I don't like this, or I want to
Mhm.
try a different therapist, because you don't always jive with the person that you're meeting. And that's okay too. So it's important to remember those things.
Exactly. Thank you so much for bringing this conversation to the podcast because it's it's one that needs to be normalized, and we
Yeah.
need to be able to have this conversation without the fear of being judged or guilted or shamed. Like there's no space for that, I believe, in the diabetes journey. And
Mhm.
just thank you for helping us bring it to light because it's so important.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to be here, and I love talking about this type of stuff. So anytime that you want to talk to me, let me know.
Yes. Do you want to share your Instagram handle or you don't have to, just in case
Oh, yeah,
anybody can?
sure. It is underscore KAYGLUECK.
And I'll put that in the show notes as well so everybody can find you and at least connect with you because they know that you've been there. They know that the conversation is safe with you. So
Yeah,
and
definitely.
thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye bye.